It's 2:47 a.m. You're awake. One thin, rising whine, barely a sound, cuts through the dark and lands right beside your ear. You slap your own face. You miss. You lie there, heart beating too fast for a room this safe, straining to hear it again. That reflex is at least 5,000 years old, and tonight, in a sealed, air-conditioned bedroom with not a single real threat inside it, your nervous system just ran a program written on the banks of the Nile. So here's the question. How did people survive that sound when the bite could carry something lethal? When there was no medicine, no screens, no science, no way to even know what was killing them? You've never thought about this, but you've lived it. Let's rewind further than you think. Imagine standing in Egypt 2,500 years ago. Not the Egypt of postcards. Forget the pyramids. Picture the real one, a civilization squeezed into a thin green ribbon of river, floodplain, and marsh, with desert stretching out on either side like a wall. Everything that keeps you alive is in that ribbon. The water, the fish, the fields, and something else, something small. A Greek traveler named Herodotus came through and wrote it down. He wasn't a biologist, he was an observer, collecting what people told him. And what the people of the marsh country told him was this: the gnats were unbearable. The Greek word he used can mean gnat, mosquito. We can't identify the exact species. But what he describes next is so specific it stops you cold. He says the people living higher up slept in towers because the wind wouldn't let the insects reach them. And the marsh dwellers, he says they took the nets they used for fishing by day and hung them around where they slept at night. According to him, the insects would bite through a tunic, bite through linen wrapped tight around the body, but they wouldn't even try to bite through the net. Hold on to that, because it's the whole story. First, understand the trap. The Nile wasn't a background detail, it was the resource system. You cannot leave it. Leaving the water means leaving the fertile soil, the fish, the transport, the entire basis of life. Staying means living next to the one thing mosquitoes need to reproduce, still, shallow water where their young develop. The gift and the danger came from the same ecological productivity. Same river, same mud, same reeds turning black against the sky at dusk. And here's the part your brain should find uncomfortable. They couldn't see any of this. Not the biology, not the mechanism. They saw the bite. They saw the itch. And then, days later, sometimes, they saw the fever. Picture this. A man who was working normally yesterday is curled tight on a mat in the heat, teeth chattering, skin burning, then cold, then burning again. His family watches. Someone has to take his work. Someone has to fetch the water, watch the children, do the labor his body just stopped doing. And nobody in that room can answer the only question that matters. Why him? Why now? Who's next? For a long time, the modern assumption was that malaria in ancient Egypt was an educated guess. Hot climate, some water, must have been malaria. Then, in 2008, researchers did something that shouldn't be possible. They took samples from 91 ancient Egyptian remains, bones thousands of years old, and searched for the DNA of Plasmodium falciparum, the deadliest malaria parasite. 2 samples came back positive, sequenced, verified in an independent laboratory, 99% concordance. 2 out of 91 sound small. That's the point. It proves the parasite was really there, not as a theory, not as a climate inference, but as molecules still sitting inside the dead, while honestly refusing to tell us how common it was. 2 years later, a separate investigation tested Egypt's most famous family, Tutankhamun's line. Royal mummies, the most protected people alive in their time. 4 of them carried molecular traces of falciparum malaria, including the boy king himself. When I first read that study, I had to read it twice. The most protected human being in the ancient world. Gold, guards, physicians, every barrier wealth could build, and the mosquito's microscopic passenger was inside him. A 2024 meta-analysis of mummy studies found roughly a fifth of tested mummies positive, not a fifth of Egyptians. The sample is biased, preservation is uneven, but enough to know this was not rare. This was the water they drank from the air at night. So now the stakes are real, and the problem gets worse because of when it happens. Mosquitoes of the kind that carry malaria do most of their biting after dark, and humans do this strange, reckless thing after dark. We go unconscious, on purpose. Every night, you voluntarily shut down every sense that might detect a threat, and your body keeps broadcasting its location anyway. You can't stop it. Your warmth, your breath, your odor, Modern lab studies show a host-seeking mosquito follows those signals like a map, heat guiding the final approach at close range. The sleeping person doesn't have to do anything to be found. Being alive does it for them. Now add heat. You feel it if you imagine the night, a mat on the floor, because most Egyptians didn't sleep in ornate beds. Mats were the rule, beds were luxury, the air thick, sweat pooling, linen sticking to your skin. Pull the cloth over yourself and you cook. Throw it off and the buzz comes back. On, off, on, off. Sound familiar? You've done this. Blanket up? Too hot. Blanket down. Ankle exposed. Your brain still runs this exact calculation every summer night. This is the engineering problem. Stay cool enough to sleep, exposed enough to breathe, protected enough to survive. And the Marsh Egyptians' answer, according to Herodotus, was sitting in the corner dripping river water. The fishing net. Don't skip past this, because it's the most sophisticated moment in the entire story. Nobody invented anything. That's what makes it brilliant. Somebody looked at an object designed for one job, trapping fish, and saw past its name to its properties. Light, flexible, permeable to air. A boundary that stops bodies but lets the night through. Catch dinner by day, armor by night. The object didn't change. The person looking at it did. And this isn't just a Greek traveler's tall tale. Archaeologists have the needles, a wooden netting needle from Gurab, New Kingdom, made for knotting exactly these kinds of fishing nets. The technology existed. Ordinary people owned it. Herodotus isn't describing royal medicine. He's describing marsh families and the tool already hanging in their homes. Then, in the very next breath, he gives you the second solution. The people higher up didn't need nets. They climbed. Towers, he says. Elevation. Because the wind up there kept the insects down. We have independent evidence this fits Egyptian life. House models from the Middle Kingdom show stairs to rooftops where people could sleep in the brutal summer heat. Not proof of mosquito towers, but proof that Egyptians already treated height as sleeping technology. And the biology checks out. Mosquitoes hunt by following odor plumes carried on moving air. Wind doesn't just cool you, it scrambles the map. Two communities. Two completely different answers to the same problem. One changes the boundary around the body. The other changes the position of the body itself. Neither kills a single mosquito, but neither was perfect. And that's where it gets frightening again. A net fails at one torn edge. Skin pressed against the mesh is skin a mosquito can reach. Wind dies on still nights. And here's the cruel asymmetry. Protection has to work every night. The parasite only has to get through once. One infectious bite, that's all it takes. And the bite is forgotten long before the fever arrives. Exposure and consequence separated by days, the causal chain invisible. Humans learn best when action and outcome touch. Malaria breaks the link. So why does any of this still live in you? Because your sleeping brain never stopped listening. Sleep researchers have found that the human brain keeps processing sound while you sleep, selectively. A familiar voice barely stirs you. An unfamiliar one triggers measurable responses you never consciously notice. The refrigerator hum becomes background within minutes. The intermittent buzz beside your ear never does. Unpredictable, close to the face, paired with the memory of skin contact, it is almost perfectly designed to defeat habituation. And once you've heard it once, you keep listening after it's gone. You lie still. Every harmless itch becomes evidence. You're not being irrational. Somewhere inside you, a very old threat assessment system just found a signal it cannot classify as safe. And it isn't only mosquitoes. There's a group of people alive today, the Hadza of Tanzania, whose sleep researchers tracked, and they found something that reframes everything. Through the night, at almost any moment, someone in the group is awake. Different chronotypes staggered across the dark, so the camp is never entirely unconscious. Field studies of other non-industrial peoples, the San, the Tsimane, show sleep bending to temperature, season, and environment, not to clocks. Sleep was never meant to be total surrender. It was always a negotiation with the environment. Air conditioning didn't delete that negotiation. It just hid it from you. That's the thing comfort took, not health. Ancient life was brutal, and the mummies proved the biological cost was real. What it took was a kind of daily intelligence, reading airflow, knowing which ground stays wet, which spots feel the wind, which nights turn dangerous. Knowledge with no textbooks, built from 1,000 small observations. This place is worse, that place is better, sleep higher, hang the net, passed from parent to child until the rule outlived everyone who understood why it worked. And maybe that's the deepest idea here. We assume knowledge means explanation. But correct behavior can exist long before correct theory. Those marsh families didn't know about Plasmodium. They didn't need to. They had something arguably more durable, a practice that worked, preserved by culture the way a gene is preserved by a body. The child doesn't need to understand the net. The child needs to watch the parent check the edges. 1,000 years later, a lab finally catches up and names the reason. Science didn't create the wisdom. It arrived late to explain it. So the next time you close your window, draw your curtains and check the screen for gaps. Watch your own hands. A parent checking a net's edge on the Nile. You locking a window at 2 a.m. Same gesture, same ancient program. The room is new. The body trying to sleep inside it is not. Strip away 5,000 years of technology, and what remains is one image, a sleeper on a mat, moonlight catching individual strands of mesh. The mosquito still out there, alive, undefeated, irrelevant. The Nile still dark beyond the doorway. Nothing was conquered, nothing was eliminated. A few cubic meters of air around one vulnerable body were made trustworthy, and that was enough to let consciousness let go. Maybe civilization was never the pyramids. Maybe it was never about escaping nature at all. Maybe it's this, the accumulated, nameless intelligence of ordinary people learning how thin a wall can be and still hold through the night. If a fishing net can hide 5,000 years of forgotten genius, what else in your ordinary life is an ancient survival solution wearing a modern disguise? You've been carrying this longer than you realize.
If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to BackTimes, hit the bell icon, and share this video with someone who loves history.